Are you a complete Prometheus beginner? Don't worry, this video is for you. By the end of this video, you're going to understand what Prometheus is and all of its components. You will have built a Python and FastAPI app by hand manually, so you'll understand exactly how that is built, and that app will emit or make Prometheus metrics available, and you will have Prometheus up and running and capturing those metrics. So let's dig straight in. Okay, what is Prometheus and how does it relate to observability? Well, if you're familiar with observability, it's commonly said there are three pillars: metrics, logs, and traces. First thing to realize is that Prometheus is only concerned with metrics. Forget about logs and traces. Prometheus is not involved in that whatsoever. It's purely metrics. So Prometheus itself is a bunch of components. When you download Prometheus, what you're downloading is a single binary, and it is a server, a metric storage database, a time series database. It has a user interface, of course. It has an API. It has alerting mechanisms, which we'll get into in a future video. And also it has a query language so that you can interact with the metrics that it is storing, and that's called PromQL. Now, the other thing people might mean if they say Prometheus and we have Prometheus is the metrics and the metric format. And that's what we're going to start with first in this video. So the first thing to understand is that Prometheus is primarily pull-based. Push versus pull is the difference between going to a lecture and being told about whatever the lecturer wants you to know about, and going on YouTube and you deciding what content you want to learn about and which videos you're going to watch. The first is a push-based. You're sitting there in the lecture and you're getting stuff pushed at you and you don't really have any control of the timing or what's being pushed. The second, the YouTube example, is you're going to YouTube and you're deciding what to watch, when to watch it, and how to watch it. So that is you kind of pulling the information to you. Again, Prometheus is primarily a pull-based mechanism. That becomes important when we configure Prometheus later in this video. Now, I said Prometheus is primarily pull-based. You can push metrics to Prometheus using the push gateway, and maybe in a future video I'll get into that. But for now, Prometheus, just assume Prometheus is pulling those metrics. The other way you might hear it said is that pulling is scraping. So if you hear the term Prometheus is scraping my metrics, it's the same thing. Prometheus is reaching out and scraping or pulling those metrics into itself. Prometheus supports different metric types, and it's important to know that before we get started. So what are they? Well, the first is a counter. A counter can only go up or be reset back to zero if, for example, the endpoint or the server restarts. So think about a single web server and you want to count the number of orders placed through that web server. Well, the orders are going to go up 1, 2, 3, and so on until the web server for some reason restarts, and then the number of orders go back to zero and we start again. Summaries and histograms both sample observations. They're a little bit more complicated, but basically you can think of them as a summary of data in different buckets. I'm going to do a whole different video on summaries and histograms in the future. We're not going to focus on them in this video. And the last metric type is the one that we're going to focus on in this video, and it's called a gauge. And a gauge is very simply a metric that can do whatever. Go up, go down, go to zero, jump around. It's exactly what you will logically think of as a metric, and that's why I'm focusing on it in this video, because it's the easiest to understand. Okay, enough talking. Let's jump into the code. First things first, we need to download Prometheus. Go to your favorite search engine and type in Prometheus GitHub and follow the link to github.com/Prometheus/Prometheus and go to the releases tab down on the right here, and then find the release that for your operating system, download it and extract it. When you extract it, you will see a binary called Prometheus. So if you need to add the executable bit, move it into its own folder. Now, the next thing we need to do is start creating our Python application, and that will be the thing that creates the Prometheus metrics that Prometheus will ultimately scrape. So let's walk through the code for that. Okay, so of course we need FastAPI. Now let's have a look at what we're actually defining, which is a single endpoint called /metrics. This is the default for Prometheus. Prometheus, if you don't tell it otherwise, will look or scrape or pull from the /metrics endpoint. And then we are telling FastAPI, please don't return HTML or JSON or anything else. Please return a plain text response. And then the response is going to be a hash, the word help, and then my_first_metric. Why? Well, this is particularly important syntax for Prometheus because my first metric is the name of the metric. Then we put another space and then some free text description of what that metric is. Now that line, of course, we've got a line break here. So that line is meant and designed to be human readable assistance so that a human reading the metrics page will understand what this metric is supposed to be. The following line will again be a hash followed by the word type, followed by the name of the metric, and then finally a space and the type of metric. Remember, counter, summary, histogram, or gauge in this case. And finally a new line, and then the name of the metric and the metric value itself. So go ahead, mess around with that if you want, change the metric value if you want. So I'm now going to start this server in dev mode, which means any changes I make to these metric numbers will be reflected by FastAPI in real time. And I'm going to start the server on port 9123. You pick your own port. The reason I'm picking this is because I don't want it to clash with Prometheus. Now let's go to localhost 9123 on /metrics, if I can type correctly, and you'll see our page. This is the absolute bare minimum of what a Prometheus metrics page will look like. We've got our helpline, we've got our type line, and then we've got the metric. If we had multiple metrics, of course, this whole block would just be copy and pasted kind of and repeated. So if you're ever looking at a Prometheus metrics page, now you understand what is going on. Okay, perfect. Now let's figure out how we get Prometheus up and running and then tell Prometheus how and where to scrape those metrics from. So right now we've got the Prometheus binary, and Prometheus needs a configuration YAML file. So I've already created one and I'm going to walk you through these settings. So the settings in Prometheus YAML start with the keyword global, and then we define a scrape interval. Now this is how often at a global level Prometheus is going to scrape anything you tell it about, i.e. the targets, the endpoints that it will know about in a moment. We haven't defined those yet, but I'm basically saying scrape every 15 seconds. The default, that's quite aggressive. The default is every minute, but for us, let's just do it as 15 seconds. And the evaluation interval is something different. That's for alerting rules, which I'll get into in a future video, but I'm just setting that to 1 minute for the moment, but it doesn't matter for this video. Let's have a look at the scrape configs. So a scrape config is telling Prometheus where to look for metrics. Remember, Prometheus pulls metrics, so Prometheus needs to know where to go and get those metrics from. So we start with a job name, and I'm just going to call mine my custom app. So every metric that I pull from these endpoints will have a tag, a label in Prometheus terms called my custom app. Metrics path, as we know, is /metrics. And then we are saying, okay, here is an endpoint. Here is a single target on localhost. Oh, I need to change that because I started it on 9123. Remember, this is the target that Prometheus will go out, reach out, and scrape localhost :9123 at /metrics. Okay, let's start Prometheus. Just run the binary pointing it to that config file, Prometheus space -- config dot file equals prometheus.yml. And you should see output like that. And if you get no errors, everything looks good. Scrolling up slightly, you'll notice that Prometheus by default runs on port 9090. So let's go back to our browser. We'll leave that open and go to port 9090. And there we have Prometheus. Okay, is Prometheus working? Does it know about our endpoint, our server? How do we tell? Go up to status, go to targets, and you should see that Prometheus knows about and is pulling metrics from, i.e. scraping metrics from one endpoint, localhost on 9123/metrics. The status should be up, and it's got some labels. As I remember, I said it adds the job label, and the last scrape was some time ago, and it even tells you how long it took Prometheus to actually, read that page and scrape. So if I refresh there, last scrape was 7 seconds ago, and so on. So this, if I talk long enough, will go up to 15 seconds, remember? And then it'll say 260 milliseconds ago. Prometheus is successfully scraping the endpoint. Wonderful. How do we chart things? Go to graph and then just start looking for your metric. What is your metric called again? I can't remember. It's called my_first_metric. So let's just start typing my, and there we go, my first metric. And hit execute. And we get the line. My first metric is 30. Perfect. Let's go to the graph. And let's just shrink this time down a little bit to the last 5 minutes. And you can see the metric has always been 30. Remember I said we're going to run FastAPI in dev mode? This is exactly why. I don't want to restart the server at all, so I'll just show you that Python is still running. I'm going to change this to any value, 24. I'll save that, and you'll notice FastAPI notices the change, refreshes the page, and if we give this a few seconds, Prometheus has automatically scraped the endpoint just as it is. Prometheus is just running, constantly scraping, and our metric has dropped from 30 to 24. So there you are. I really like to work from first principles and really understand the bottom layers, which to me is that Prometheus metrics page. Understand how I create metrics and how that page, what that page looks like. Now, of course, there are frameworks and SDKs. So in reality, you don't have to write that page manually by hand. There are helpers, but I think it's important to really understand what's being created and how it's working, so that as you build on that knowledge, you can feel comfortable that you're not assuming some kind of knowledge. So stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you again very soon. Thanks for watching.